Hello, fellow YouTubers. Nancy Grace, if you hear this, your sources, Connecticut has a Whiting forensics recorded and confessed and demonstrated involved is a Bob Chase. Well, I have barely any communications with him at all. He was supposed to read a police report to me. He never did. Where I was charged with harassment, and they're changing and making confessions tied to that police report as they did with a whole bunch of others. I was charged with harassment when I caught them with a principal child abuser. They're making confessions how they use predicate acts with facts methods of asking people to call back and making confessions and demonstrations. So obligations for them to call back. And then each time making more confessions and demonstrations, preventing the people from getting a response from the school or even speaking to the school, and then putting them in fake and changed transcripts, fake ties, fake natures of ties to other people. These are people involved with insidious, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, raw readings of statutes and precedents of all natures, regarding too with the validity of what's communicated online. This is used where how these are people involved with the state judicial branch offices and the state corrections offices and names next to or in the conjunctive to them, like driving by, with speech involved with fake transcripts. A bunch of judges and prosecutors involved now with the judicial branch offices and corrections offices also with wire and mail crimes, where they have rules too with predicate acts with facts, sticking fake things in databases as collusion /S with all natures of crime scenes, and next to a reported proven serial killers on body dumping spots, as one's involved too with the prison he's at, with the names on off corrections officers too, all kinds of natures of organized crimes. I don't even know their name. The one with the name Dave. He's involved with behavior racketeering, fake motivations too. I never even had a word of conversation for him to pretend that he knows me. He tried to make a fake exception with people involved with sequence shifts and home break-ins in my area with Weathersfield police chiefs retired through time, involved with some courts, judges, prosecutors, involved with some doctors that have fake conversations with me too, involved with their kids and more sexual and medical crimes on kids, with some black KKK, Confederate flag theme, Latino theme, Italian theme, right on Facebook too. Facebook has roles with rape threats, sequence shifts, with Facebook page of a principal upskirt Nature's campus, with Weathersfield Police Chief tired and medical offenders. There are a lot of people in the world who pretend they can't believe that titles are not worth what they pretend they are worth. And they're screening the other names because there are a whole bunch of other countries and there are criminal enterprises and private ones at the same time involved. So also when they deny this, there are also, they can't, that's why they can't get onto paper legitimately. Because once they do that, they're going to show that they've been roles with way worse crimes and crime methods, all kinds of evidences, behavior racketeering, and relative delusions. These are people delusions wrought regarding principles. That's how it has been left out, what is inseparable from the subjects like slavery, which is how we have black people's white divides. That's inseparable from the subject. And James Madison's plan is inseparable from. It's a principle. That's what George Washington agreed to help them and to use that plan. That's what gave everyone and no one had free speech. Our founders declassified this many ways. We know this. People are keeping blamed on other things, others, ourselves, things that our founders communicated, that nature itself communicates. One of the things all those crazy laws were about at the same time is about a human fact, human nature breaching method, fake integrity as an identity of collusion, criminally foreign influence / hyper criminally foreign influence, and tactically delusions raw. Otherwise, and pretending otherwise to an extent, otherwise that body was sensed. And that is adapted to, including if it was a majority of people, including if it was everyone of an entire country. You guys don't stay styles, changing and faking what I said, fishing for, looking at all these words I didn't understand. I was attached to fake conversations with the world about the World Trade Center attack by WFSB intelligence and intelligence next to them, the differences of their guilt roles with that and their sources. And in other words, planting fake things in news. The same time, WTNH sources have been planting evidences on off campuses, and next to them, identity theft, fraud, slanders. You have the difference of the collusions and the differences too of the parents and of the kids pretending passions, emotions about other people, repeating fake things with them, including things that are not even in databases. As collusions with the ones interbranch locations have been putting fake things in databases through time. Increasingly, people at Central Connecticut State University intelligence intercities, they have a Christopher Walters involved with people next to Harvard Hospital, with sexual and medical offenders of kids, with two speech class teachers I had in high school, involved with kids involved with Washington, D.C., and their conversations with my teacher. I never had a personal conversation with either of those teachers in my life. They're involved with people involved with the home break-ins of my area and all sides of criminal and civil cases, and the court's names in the police forms and mayors in conjunctions to them. Timed collusion /S, increasingly with totally different body dumping spots and names next to them at the campuses too. Untimely deaths years apart with ones on off campuses connected intercities. And timed use /S of it that brought up the other house. I don't even know their name. They know my name. There's I don't know his name. He reportedly knows my name. One of the guys on Ponsai Drive. People tied to a Luigi Guerrero, and as a Luigi Guerrero, and Paul Zano, involved with sequence shifts with the Jonathan Maiano and my neighbors. I never saw them around my neighbors. And their extended family members have our families that have members at campuses, and they have sense and sensibilities, repeating what other people say. And as victims /hyper victims, but if you treat it like that, they pretend things are debatable. Then they start using fake things. In other words, I'll bring it before the courts. These are the ones involved with the courts at crime scenes with them. Put it in at the campuses, and then on all sides of the kids' houses. In adults' houses relative to this. This breaching method employed collusions with itself only allowed, otherwise that body would be sensed through ourselves, including our founders. Our founders declassified this. That's why how they didn't. It's part of why how they didn't have free speech, and everyone had to pretend other to an extent. /S. Otherwise, that body was sensed again, including if that the body was a majority of people, including if it was an entire country, entire state. Any grouping of countries to counter what this caused and keeps as rolls with it. The difference of the homeland guilt when the Civil War is brought up. There are self-value rules, forcing, tricking, hurting, and persuading other things others themselves blame for it. Blame for why and how people sacrifice their lives. And then they'll use that as proof to jump into other people's conversations when they try to speak about how the laws were criminally foreign influenced. Tactically delusions wrought, being everyone pretending other. Everyone used, as a replacing what James Madison communicated. The names of the people, the sciences, the names of the people, the differences. Using those differences to get over on strangers, pretend it's debatable on a mass scale. Originally and still, people are saying things at location and just having that fake. In other words, even if they made up the stories, I put the link to a reported murder. Even if they didn't make it up, they have already the news media and exceptions like public television. They have recorded self-value roles, changing and faking what others say, and then or valuing other people having done such. So like, well, look, it's not my job. I didn't do that. This is also where they have a group thing reported by the news, reportedly associated with Donald Rumsfeld, who is reportedly no longer with us. My condolences. But in other words, A through Z have been species systems tactical terror in the human species body, individual body. And this is important because this is part of how we can discern. There are still criminally foreign influence / tactically delusion / hypercriminally foreign influence / tactically delusions wrought. Names of the people, the sciences, which we have to address simultaneously with and as not just collusions with the hyperforeign, but through other natures of criminal insidiousness at the same time, and differences, like the difference between overt criminal enterprises as criminal insidiousness natures, private ones, or the breaching of method that had slavery entrenched. For example, before America's founders were born, northern colonies and southern colonies, non-distinctly, a hyper-foreign method of fact-cheaping nature, torture, extortion, slavery, and all roles to an extent /s even against themselves, syntactically, therefore physically. Otherwise, that body would be sensed, and that would be and is adapted to. And so these are principles that a breaching method used to teach the names of the people, the sciences, that countries A through Z, and other natures of overt criminal enterprises, private ones, insidiousness inherent to, active to, and progressive to, opinion nature, syntax nature of people A through Z. Differences A through Z. Otherwise, that body is sensed. Again, even if it's a majority of people, even if it is everybody, black people. If modern countries A through Z entertain subject treatments as entertained, it still has complete possession over them. Black pupils. You ever wonder why, how, they have the audacity to pretend they can't fathom where and how and why. Only fake integrity has spoken for the location /s, like behind people, behind people in rap videos. The design, the suburbs were designed before America's founders were born, with quality /qualities, with aspect, with /aspects, and with nature itself as criminal insidiousness nature, /hypercriminal insidiousness nature. I'm not even a lawyer, thank God, because lawyers were recorded with the names of the people, the sciences, used as a projection where the campuses are manifest, as an identity of relativity to where and how the republic is manifest. No, but now through and as systems tactical ulterior, from the one that was revealed, being led by the one that is projecting to us, where and how there are totally different species bodies that are also individual species bodies of individuals with all group differences, demonstrating to us there's one identity of value progression that is none of the things that we could discern, except for it is all things anyway. And that is the way we could discern it. It is further how it is, so therefore it is functional. It is other further they're showing us it is functional. How there is a distinct identity of hyper invisible but still discernible, that is conjunctive to all things. Therefore, to the parts of speech of English grammar as the invisible but still discernible. So know also a subject as the invisible but still discernible. Has conjunction to the hyper invisible but still discernible. And how it does is with a invisible / hyper invisible but still discernible. Because there are parts of its complete identity that are inseparable from the finite part, the individual part of itself, that individual identity of value progression. Excuse me, that is not us, is not the fish, it is not the birds, but fish, birds, and humanity have two eyes. It is showing it is all things anyway. It is showing this is its identity of hypervolume sciences is inseparable from all parts of even things made up like art. It is the difference of the finite, or the order of the finite, or the order of what is active grouped. It is distinctly, non-distinctly, and is simultaneously / hyper simultaneously. Those parts of everything, and then the simultaneous. What is simultaneous? As everything else comes in with demonstrations of their being, a distinct identity of hyper simultaneous, a distinct identity of simultaneous nature. Again, for example, nature itself is showing us the scientific the needs to discern a name, a scientific value for that which is all things at the same time as its own identity. Just like, in other words, while not all things at the same time, but anyway, the tip of your hair on your head is not your whole identity, but it is anyway. The same way, many pray. Vaccines. We don't have to agree on the name. We have to agree about the identity of value / variable progression, or what we disagree about. See, they won't get onto paper into branch because they've been sticking their databases are used per what worst furthers overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and terrorists at the same time. That's why and how all of a sudden everyone's speaking and they're using extremism with their logic. They're using words like radical, tactical, ulterior from how nature shows those words should be appreciated. In other words, and as styles and natures of logic that can't defend that and afford to be discerned, which our founders left us, what our founders actually communicated to us. They had to declassify that and how it means for us to discern how they did not have free speech. They had to declassify. No, James Madison's plan, clearer than day, is what, that's what got George Washington counter-extorted and agreeing to counter-extort everyone else. But no one's allowing anyone to be honest about the extortion of George Washington. Everyone has valued self-valued roles with, uses of knowledge of good and evil as the sciences, including history and American history, as it is presented out of sequence, replacing principal things that nature itself and that our founders communicated for us to understand simultaneously. James Madison's plan and the founders behind him left declassified means for us to discern and obligations nature itself gives us to make everyone understand clearly that and how and why before America's founders were born. A breaching method had already been entrenched in northern colonies and southern colonies distinctly, with slavery to keep house sickly non-distinctly too, even though it was against everyone. So it means to discern that left out while they're speaking for integrity anyway, or against it, wrongly exactly the way it wanted and needs. Because the breaching method knew that nature would increasingly demonstrate to us. A human fact treating nature breaching method is one of the things that is true always, what the laws were value as. What the overt criminal enterprises, the private ones, other different countries at the same time were value as. Rolls with a human fact treating nature breaching method. The difference of it manifests as a predicate acts for facts delivery system method, or as a criminal and citizens nature delivery system method, or the difference of that too, with estimation of subject treatments now through and as systems tactical ulterior from one that could afford to have discerned how ancient sciences were revealed and why they were revealed that way. To have the names of the people of the sciences, treat exception nature properly. The experts on psychiatry have all kinds of drugs and medicines, crimes, roles. The difference of it, they're putting fake uses of drugs, fake ties, fake nature of ties to people in databases. They have increasingly people with in other words, I put stuff from a toilet in there too, because I saw the people involved with the person. I forced people to call the police for it, but without telling them why, because I knew they were going to have to hide libel questions. They're increasingly leaking these things. The intelligence community leaks things through communications and through vertical and horizontal confessions that are manifest relative to where and to how they have been confessing things to the breaching method at countries A through Z, because it measures and maintains the countries A through Z, the names of the people of science, is only capable of blaming other things, others, ourselves, for things that it caused. And it measures and maintains them. That's stupid fake. And need to value stupid fake, other ways manifest, like with all the crimes and things like that, because they're collusion/S at each age and nature of campus, even conscious use/S of homeschooled families, where and how the breaching method employed people's syntactical value defenses of their uses of words/values like adult and kid. In other words, simultaneously, they need to hide that how they already did that. Overt criminal enterprises, private ones, foreign and domestic intelligence, interbranch family members, names on all sides of all natures of criminal and civil cases, and crime scenes, including body dumping spots and untimely deaths on and off campuses connected. Increasingly, people on Griswold Street and people conjunctive to them have roles of identity theft, fraud, slanders against me. And they'll tell you this themselves. They're just repeating fake things. I don't know the people tied. Increasingly, a former mayor Gold has roles with his family putting and people tied to them with a whiting forensics involved with proven child abusers, leaders of kids, and more sexual and medical offenders of kids with foreign and domestic countries and other retired mayors and natures of conjunctions to them. It's also manifest that way because of where and how they use them and have used them criminally foreign impulse, tactically delusions raw. Increasingly, people involved with the old Wethersfield founding locations and next in conjunctions to them, and the difference of that. They have collusion/S from there all the way along, Route 175 through Wethersfield, through Newington, all the way to into New Britain, Central Connecticut State University. Names on all sides of it are increasingly roles with years apart, totally different murders, and a serial killer himself, and roles with differences like name switching and forging, fake motivations. They aren't legitimately with any legitimate use of a right to lie. They're going to pretend they have a right to lie where they don't have it. And then they're going to pretend not to realize that while they're leaking too. Like about Route 175, Wethersfield police are recorded, confess, demonstrate, confirm they'd rather have me draw these maps and make these people's names. Like a Paul Kelly and his neighbors are involved with the FBI too, leaking their roles with wire crimes and with sexual and medical offenders of kids, including with judges, family members, with the same house/S, and people involved with the news locations, putting fake things in the news, and roles involved with originally still all natures of investigations. Investigators use remotely criminally foreign impulse, tactical delusions, raw collusion/S, predicate acts with facts, needs, nature, styles, all tactically, and they're going to speak on crimes. So this is a certain type of forgiveness, is because that's the only thing they're capable of being with the names of the people of the sciences. Offensively shown by the breaching method and through our own at the same time, that they're already being and have been used criminally foreign impulse, tactically delusions raw. This is what any honest voice would have revealed. All the other honest voices have been using truth for lies as victims. That's why everyone's fighting about truth and lie and leaving out the breaching method's roles with that. Our founders discerned it clearer than day. This is discernible. But see, in other words, that's why the interbranch has to forge names and switch names on a mass scale. They recorded themselves already collusion/S with all natures of investigators at the crime scenes, and it will show them having people time where they're going to walk and putting fake motivations each year connected. So they have, in other words, Please get them on paper, one name and sequence. I keep asking Judge Napolitano to get them on paper, one name and sequence. They have it before he left Fox News, and now since. The difference of that too, they're using criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. They communicate that groupthink is also relative to where how they're pretending they can't realize that people that answer the phones for them could be involved with predicate acts with facts, involved with the crime scenes, and with all sides of criminal and civil cases, putting the same sequence shifts with the courts at the same time, same fake things into databases, collusions with a whole bunch of other countries at the same time. And these are ones intercities and intra-cities, Connecticut, intercampuses and intra-campuses, Connecticut, and the names next to it with a whole bunch of other countries. Overt criminal enterprise, private ones now terrorists too, with their extended family members, and with their collusions directly and indirectly with Wethersfield police, who attached me to fake conversations with them as a kid and then as an adult, as ones involved with the World Trade Center attack, and ones involved with the home break-ins years apart, and ones in the past and ones more recently, increasingly involved with forensics names. Whiting Forensics has state police involved with them, with the same house /S, like people with the name Colo, and tied to people named Jensen and Mike, Mike Roberts and a Mike Kerr, and two Jerry Kerrs or more people with the name Jerry Kerr are involved with Officer Jerry Miller, with the Wethersfield Police Department and the fire departments, and their roles with foreign and domestic military, like involved next to campuses, something to do. They have federal evidences, crimes, identity theft, fraud, sequence shifts, and criminally foreign influence uses of investigations, investigators, predicate acts, methods with names associated with the parks and next to the parks through time. And the parks and recreation, further with sexual and medical offenders of kids, foreign and domestic medical families too, that are using their own differences and other people, including their sexual differences. And they're using other people's differences too. Cultural, they have female, black and white female judges, also with male judges, collusions with sexual and medical offenders of kids, ones involved with the prosecutors and judges, family members, personally and professionally. A bunch of people named Brendan Leahy affected confessions to me on people from a whole bunch of people from other areas on my street when I was a kid and then as an adult, because they've been putting fake ties, fake natures of ties to me. As the people involved with the Brian Silver, with the Connecticut's District Court, involved also with the Judge Hall, and names on all sides of criminal and civil cases and their sources that are increasingly involved before the World Trade Center attack in that context, and since involved with predicate acts and facts against me, and the same names involved with all with connections with each of the instances with intercities. Multiple police departments are personally involved with them with wire crime acts and methods, falsified police reports, switching names, predicate acts with facts methods, and names next to totally different body dumping spots and reported killers. A Joshua Stryker is increasingly involved with intelligence, with identity theft, fraud, slanders against me, with people at Trinity College involved with the name Cololo, directly and indirectly. A bunch of people confessed, recorded, demonstrated, confirmed that he's involved with attaching me to fake locations, fake ties, fake natures, ties to themselves. One time I faked using alcohol because it was when I was in like seventh grade. With a whole bunch of people I keep finding more things confessed. They plant evidences. There's a Jennifer Smith involved with a Christine, involved with, in other words, people involved with a whole bunch of people tied to Ray Colo's house, involved with the judicial branch offices and the corrections offices, inter-services, and people tied to Eric Klotz was in my sixth grade class before he even came to my sixth grade class. And people tied to him when I was in my sixth grade class. Increasingly, people tied to body dumping spots also have rules of home break-ins in the area. And there are people tied to Eric Klotz and his family members and neighbors who are also involved with the Kevin Dillon, and a guy who said it was his partner to two of speech class teachers I had, increasingly involved with Washington, D.C., with criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions, reading uses of the judicial branch offices of Connecticut and of the corrections offices, and names next to them involved with predicate acts with facts at campuses I went to, in databases putting fake things and acting tied to it, as people increasingly involved with the Wethersfield police, who attached me to going down to the police station and fake conversations with them as a kid, now as an adult. And the kids who did go down there and speak with them, they had time collusions with a whole bunch of other countries over criminal enterprises, private ones, and recorded uses consciously of the differences between kids that don't even go to the same campuses, attached to criminally foreign influence, collusions with overt criminal enterprise, private ones, terrorists, and worse at the same time. They're using and have used all natures of investigators of words like crimes. These are people involved with predicate acts with facts. So we have to stop having them change our words regarding it and faking our words. WFSB attached me to fake conversations with them. And I was one of the people next to the World Trade Center they did this against. They also changed what others said about this. And so interstates, these are people with Washington, D.C. and New York. Also involved with the former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin. Also involved with WFSB intercities, with police forms refusing to identify themselves legitimately. Involved with wire crime acts and methods of the Wethersfield police, falsified police reports with them through time connected, as the ones with their sources in the same house /S, involved with extended family members at and next to the World Trade Center, including a court next to it. People with the name Scalora, people with the name Keene, increasingly involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders. They record. They'll confess this too, or they're lying. In other words, they try to film a fake exception tied to me. In other words, I never saw a Dan Keene inside of a Wethersfield campus in my life. Never saw a Dan Keene one time for one moment inside of a Wethersfield campus. No. Increasingly, people tied to the neighbors of a Keene family have rules with untimely deaths and body dumping spots, and people involved with home break-ins in my area, involved intimate ties where people at different times they had to grow up, and where adults were involved with that dishonestly. They're in other words, per a method that a breaching method shows them, because these are people that were child abused since they were kids, coming and having come through the same campuses, and the difference of the best one or the worst one. That difference is also used criminally foreign influence, tactical delusion, where and how appreciated and not, and people's syntax, and the difference of it, if appreciated or not, because you guys appreciate everything wrong. You don't leave out how we have black people's whites of eyes. So Whiting Forensics has state police interstates involved with a Colo house near me and a Smith house near me, involved with some police departments, intercities, and Wethersfield police chiefs retired and their intimate ties and their family members, involved with falsified police reports refusing to get on paper, and with a whole bunch of people from other areas who have been planting fake ties, fake natures of ties to me, and confessions on my street that they also hit. Like Robert Rodriguez brought up the principal child abuser's campus to me and his confessions of his roles with untimely deaths, which he doesn't know the extent of that, because other people also tied to him also confessed and demonstrated roles with one at Trinity College and a house at the same time. They brought up to houses they brought up at the same time with that had an untimely death years ago before that. And the Robert Rodriguez said his wife died, untimely death. These are also people with all along Route 3 and its conjunctions to it and to that, like the state judicial branch offices. It is increasingly involved with wire crime acts and methods of Wethersfield police, and Wethersfield Pizza House, which is right near there, is also involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and with sexual and medical offenders of kids at the same time with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and names involved with Hartford Hospital and next to it, the businesses and houses, and just driving by. So get the interbranch on paper, one name in sequence. They refuse to do that legitimately and lie about their motivations. For example, as some of the predicate acts with facts methods that we could observe, where and how WFSB recorded too, collusions with people long-term and short-term before the World Trade Center attack, involved with them with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and planting evidences so people can pretend not to realize collusion slash S with all natures of crime scenes that all natures of investigators have. So also they have remote uses of the sense and sensibilities of Judge Napolitano as evidence, hyper evidential here, and of all the judges. That's what we need to get them on paper, one name and sequence. Two, there are more people involved with credible threats of violence and acts of them and methods of them roles. We're going to have to get them on paper. In other words, there's a lot of forging and switching names into branch collusions with such. Prepare.